Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Brian Doyle, who is the CEO of Holden Advisors, a team of experts in pricing and sales performance. Under Brian's leadership, his clients have earned an extra $2 billion in new business, doubled their market share, and reduced commercial expenses by 20%. Brian is an expert in helping organizations lead and communicate with the 5 different generations in today's workforce. He is asked to speak regularly on the topics of leadership, pricing, negotiation, and crisis management, and is the author of Gray Goldfish, Navigating the Gray Areas to Successfully Lead Every Generation. In fact, Brian will be a presenter during the upcoming CSIA conference June 2nd through 6th in San Diego. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Let's start out by hearing how you explain what it is that you do exactly.
At Holden Advisors, we increase our clients' revenue and profitability by improving their pricing power. And that means that we help them set the right price for the value that they create for their customers, and then go get that price with how they go to market and negotiate.
Do you specialize in an industry or vertical?
Well, we're exclusive to B2B, business to business, and then we focus on manufacturing, industrials, and professional services.
What would you say is unique about how you approach a project?
So we're all about our clients' value. And there are other pricing firms and there are other sales strategy firms. But to my knowledge, no one uses value to connect them together like we do. The way that we approach this is from the mindset that you could have the best pricing strategy in the world, but if you don't know how to communicate your value to your customers, your sales teams will end up discounting and eliminating any pricing advantage that came from that great pricing strategy. And so we look at our clients' value through a variety of lenses to understand and quantify your value. And if you want, I can give you just a little bit more detail on that.
I'm very curious. Do you show up with a big clipboard and you're taking notes and looking with your magnifying glass and in drawers? What's the process like?
So there's a quant element to it and there's a qual element to it. A lot of times what we start with is looking at data, transactional data. Who is buying from you? What are they buying? How frequently are they buying it? Looking at digging in those data desk drawers, so to speak, and finding all that information. That's just a piece of the puzzle, though. From there, we conduct internal interviews, in-depth interviews with employees of our clients to understand how they think about their value. And then the next big step is talking with customers. And it is remarkable how open customers are. That's usually a point of pushback where they say, our customers aren't going to share anything with you. They do. When you ask the right questions and you are really curious, it is like they're at therapy. They open up, they share, this is what we love about your client's value. This is what we wish was better. And boy, if they did this other thing, wow, it would really make a difference. And so these pieces come together. That's how we find your differentiated value, your value compared to the competition. And then from there, that's how we determine how you should price your service. So that's the price setting part. And then also from these learnings, we figure out, well, how do you take these prices to market? And that, what's the rollout plan? What customers go first and who waits? How do you explain changes like moving from cost plus to value-based pricing? So we equip your sales team with the messaging and the tools to overcome objections and to have positive conversations with the customers so they understand where you're coming from, why the prices are the way they are. And so you're getting paid appropriately and you don't lose any customers.
What kind of pain is a potential client in that brings them to you? That is, how do they realize they have a problem and you can help them solve it?
A lot of times, Lisa, it starts with just this sense of, I think we're leaving money on the table. Maybe they haven't changed prices in a while. Maybe they have increased their value. Their service is better than it used to be, and they're charging the same amount. They have a 99% customer retention rate. Fantastic. Should I be losing more customers? Are all my customers profitable? Is this really a good thing? And then certainly when the environment changes, COVID, inflation, tariffs, all of that is like, I better take a different look at this.
Yeah. So my next question in the script is, what are your challenges? What challenges are your customers facing right now? And I feel almost silly asking it because we're recording this on April 9th, and I just opened my LinkedIn and saw that the tariffs have been paused for 90 days. So every day it's a new story, right? So I guess based on that, how are you helping your customers navigate these challenges?
Yeah, and you're right. We're hearing the same things. It's just tariffs are the number one thing on all of our customers' minds. And regardless of your political leaning and regardless of the back and forth when it comes to the nature of just international negotiation, there are tariffs here, there are tariffs coming, there will be tariffs in the future. And so the question on everyone's mind is, should I just increase prices and blame tariffs? And what I would say is no. Um, we say this with COVID and in the impacts of COVID and inflation too. Often our industrial clients are afraid of losing customers, and that really it's everybody's afraid of losing customers. So they pass along part of the cost increase, not everything. Then when tariffs or inflation go down, the customer's asking for a decrease in price that you may not be ready to give. Or like I was referring to before, you've increased your value, but because you blamed everything on tariffs, you don't have a leg to stand on. So that's number one is like, should I just pass it along? The answer is no. Let's be more thoughtful about this. And then the immediate second question is, okay, well, if I don't pass along the extra cost, what should I do? And there's a few things to consider. Number one is understand, and if you don't have one, create your profit and or market share strategy. Why do you price the way you price? Are you trying to get revenue? Are you trying to get profit? Are you trying to get market share? Are you trying to land some new logos to put on your website? What's the idea here? And so that's going to help you with the strategy. It's just not reactionary. Number two is understanding really contractually what your obligations are and your opportunities are. So some folks are going to have contracts that say it doesn't matter what happened to your cost, you can't change my price. A lot of contracts allow for that, though. So just sort of understanding what your opportunities are. Number three is thinking about your supply chains. So as we go through this, um, okay, everything's coming from China or everything's coming from Vietnam. When those tariffs come back, probably those two countries are further apart than they were initially. Um, but but where's your supply chain coming from? How does it affect the quality? Because you don't want to just trade cheaper for cheaper quality at the same time. And then have an understanding of where your competition is too. Are they in the same boat? You don't have to dive to the bottom if everybody's in the same boat. So you just, you want to understand that. And then lastly, in my mind, it's really understanding your pricing power by account and by buyer type, which we can delve into the way I think about buyer types. But there's some accounts that are going to be more price sensitive than others. So a uniform price increase is not going to be great. But thinking about, these different aspects and then your customers individually or as a segment can help you really decide where you want to raise prices, where you want to pass things along where you want to eat the price increase yourself.
While the solutions to every challenge facing your business are not always clear, one thing is certain. To be successful, you must be continuously elevating your game. And there is no better way to do that than by digging into real-world issues in real life with the real experts, your peers. That's why I'm so excited to be able to invite you to attend the 2025 CSIA Conference, June 2nd through June 6th, where hundreds of system integrators will get together in San Diego to learn and grow. I've been working with associations for my whole career, and I can honestly say I have never experienced a group of business professionals so willing to share, collaborate, and support one another. Look, this isn't about boosting attendance. It's about making sure CSIA members can fully experience the most valuable benefit the association has to offer, the CSIA Conference. Ready to learn more? Visit www.controlsys.org/2025 See you in June on the West Coast. So CSIA hosted a virtual meeting earlier this week about tariffs to help some of our system integrator members think about it, talk about it, and I know you were there. And I wasn't able to attend all the breakout sessions, so maybe you can give me a quick synopsis of what you were hearing from system integrators when it comes to tariffs and how they're tackling it, what they're thinking about, what they're particularly worried about.
So I heard, I'm just going to pass everything directly along. I heard, my prices are increasing, but it's unclear as to how much is based on tariffs and how much is based on something else. So I don't know how to pass it along. Didn't hear a lot about that customer segmentation that I was just talking about. And so there's just, there's general uncertainty. There's a desire to not get caught holding the bag, of eating all the costs, but folks are just a little uncomfortable as to how to go about that. And then, as you pointed out, it's changing so rapidly that whatever you're doing, you have to be able to live with for a little bit and take a look every once in a while and change if you need to. So not change every day, but maybe it's once a quarter or something like that.
Yeah. Can you share an example of maybe a project that was challenging and what solutions you came up with to help your customer with that problem?
Sure. So recently we had an industrial manufacturing client whose costs were increased due to inflation and looming tariffs. Their customer, and it was their largest customer. So the stakes were higher because we need to retain this customer, but by the same token, we don't want to, lose our shirt. Their customer was a large farming equipment manufacturer, and they asked for a 6% decrease in price. So the customer asked for a 6% decrease in price. It was their largest customer. And then to add to the complication of this, our client, before us coming on board, sort of agreed to it. Like they didn't sign anything, but they sort of said, "Oh, okay, all right, well, we'll try to make that happen." Then they realized that they couldn't afford that sort of price decrease, and called us. And so what we did was, as I was describing earlier, some of the same process here is we looked at their history of transactions. We looked at their history of price increases, which did not keep up with inflation. They were afraid of losing this big customer, so they didn't raise the prices. We looked at their value, and it had been increasing. And not only had it been increasing, but it could be quantified. So that was one of the things that we look at is it's not just feels like it's better. It's like, no kidding. This is what your end customer can do because you are better at your jobs. We analyzed the different channels through which they sold and saw that some were more profitable than others. So think about like OEM versus aftermarket and how those different channels can be different. So in the end, we helped them negotiate a 2% net increase instead of that 6% decrease, so an 8% difference. And we're talking about tens of millions of dollars in this particular case, so it was a lot of money.
Yeah, incremental can be a lot. So, I mean, this seems like kind of an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah.
Why is how you set your price so important?
It's the biggest lever that you can pull to improve profitability. Pricing is the biggest lever you can pull to improve profitability. And to use round numbers, if you're a $100 million business with 10% margins and you improve pricing by 10%, you double your profitability. So you make a 10% improvement in pricing, you double your profitability. And nothing else has that impact. So if you cut fixed expenses by 10%, it's not as big. If you cut variable expenses by 10%, it's not as big. If you improve your sales by 10%, it's not as big. There's nothing like pricing, and it can be implemented quickly. So you think about some of those cost reductions. If I'm going to reduce fixed costs by 10%, that's a major change in how I run my business. But I can raise prices conceivably tomorrow and start feeling the benefits right away.
So, is it enough to set the pricing strategy and then roll it out to customers, or is there more required to be successful?
Without question, we need to be very thoughtful about how we implement a pricing change. The number one concern when you discuss pricing increases is that you'll lose customers. And so we have to think about how we want to mitigate that risk. And number one is segment your customers. In some cases, you may have customers that aren't even profitable. So right now they're not profitable. So might be a good place to start. And if they balk at the price increase, you can say, thank you for your service. Uh, Um, let's not do business anymore. So that might be a great place to start. Try out your value messaging, all of that stuff. Number two is prepare trade-offs. What here at Holden Advisors we would call give gets. And so if I am going to be reducing my price, I'm going to if I'm going to give that discount, I'm going to get something in return. And the idea here is to keep price and value aligned. So if somebody says, I have to have a lower price, we could potentially say, oh, great. Well, then how about we ship inventory to you every 90 days? You keep it at your facility, and that'll let us reduce the cost. And it gives the customer choices, but it also exposes people who just want a discount for the sake of a discount instead of really understanding the value of, wait a minute, I don't want to hold all that inventory. That's your job, you know? So those give get trade-offs. Number three is prepare value communications. So make sure that the sellers are ready to go have those harder conversations and they have not only the skill, but the confidence to go have them. And then the fourth is just create that rollout schedule. Who are we going to first? Who are we going to last? There's a feedback element to that. Let's learn as we go.
So, I kind of want to, I'm just personally curious about this idea of the customers who maybe aren't making money, but in this business, if they're keeping your engineers busy, so you don't have to let people go and you keep those engineers busy. Maybe we're breaking even, but you're not letting go of this talent or having to rehire the talent later. If you can even rehire that talent, like, is there any value to that thinking or is that just crazy talk?
I don't think it's crazy talk. I mean, I think that utilization rate is part of this equation. So if you're underutilized and you say, yeah, but I see more volume coming in the future, and so I want to hold on to my folks because they're all great. You can make those choices. So you could say, hey, I'm just breaking even on this deal, but it's okay for now. Perhaps, really, in my mind, though, you can do better than that.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to make a lesser profit margin because you have capacity, that's fine. That's a business decision. You can go do that. But I don't know that I'd ever be doing it for free. And certainly, like, why would I lose money? Let's go at least go have that conversation and see where it goes.
Yeah. I guess if you're just starting out, though, sometimes there's value, I think, in having like testimonials or having a case study or having, a recommendation or, something to show people that you've done. But I'm coming from it as more of, I guess, a freelancer or a writer or something like that, not necessarily a whole business that you have to like feed people and whatnot.
Yeah, and Lisa, it goes back to that what I referred to before, what I would call your pricing purpose.
Mm,
So are you trying to get revenue? Are you trying to get profit? If you were a software as a service company, it might be all about revenue and revenue growth and logos.
mhm,
And you don't care about profitability because you're hoping that you're gonna get purchased
mm,
by somebody else, and
mhm.
you're driving up your valuation, and then you get bought in 2 years and everybody makes a lot of money. If that's your goal, awesome. But if your goal is to have sustainable profit margins and revenue growth, then, you would approach pricing differently than if you were, just starting out and for instance, if you wanted to have somebody try something new at a reduced price and be your beta tester, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
a decision you can make, but probably not forever.
Yeah, and it's a strategic decision. It's
That's right.
not doing yeah, that's the difference, right? That's you're deliberately doing that or you have a reason for doing it versus just finding out later that you did all that work and didn't make enough money on it.
Yeah, exactly. Because, when I say like you're actually losing money on some customers, there's a lot of folks who don't even know
Mm,
if they're losing money on a customer, which customers they are. They don't know that. So maybe start with understanding, are you losing money or not with certain customers? And then you can make that strategic decision.
yeah, totally. So aside from the uncertainty in the marketplace and the economy, what other, trends and challenges are you seeing in industrial automation right now?
Yeah. So integrators are facing increasingly more difficult negotiations with their customers' procurement groups. Procurement has a playbook of techniques that they have honed over time to extract discounts from salespeople. And tactics from that playbook may include things like telling you you're a commodity and somebody else is 30% cheaper. They'll play good cop, bad cop with you. One day they're yelling, one day they're nice. It could even be the same person who's yelling and nice, right? They'll delay until the end of the quarter, knowing that a salesperson has a quota to make. And so that's when the negotiations really pick up is, with a few days left in the quarter or the half. So, and that's actually something I'd like to share with the listeners is that we've compiled a top 10 list of procurement tactics. And if anybody's interested in getting the list, they can email me at B Doyle, so first initial last name, at holdenadvisors.com, and I'd be happy to send that out. It's a lot of times people who have sold for a while, they look at that list and they go, "Oh, yeah." I've seen that, and that's how I was. When
Yeah,
I first read our book, Negotiating with Backbone, I was like, "Oh, man, I've s you know, I fell into this trap more than once."
yeah. Yeah. I recently had to buy a new car and oh my goodness, you're just a little lamb to the slaughter going right into that shop with all those experienced negotiators who are playing you off on each other and they've all it's a shell game of the prices. I can only imagine what it's like to negotiate anything more than that for sure. Also, I just want to say when people are trying to reach you, Holden, is it two O's or an O and an E? So it's Holdon or En?
EN, Holden advisors with an S on the end,
Yeah.
.com.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
for some reason I always think I always get that spelling wrong. Okay. So, going back to the procurement and negotiating, why is the situation getting worse?
Because it works. Because these procurement groups have seen that, oh my gosh, when we go through these tactics, we drive the price down. And procurement earns an average discount of 20% from salespeople. So it's not a coincidence that when you hear there's a guy down the street with a lower price, the person down the street is 30% lower because they know that they always use 30%. So they know they're going to scoot you up to about 20%.
Hmm.
And that's the average that they get.
Hmm.
So they have made over the years billions and billions of dollars using these techniques. And so why would they change?
So this is good to know. And as I mentioned in the beginning, you will be a speaker at the conference. So maybe there's other things you could tell people during the session. But tell me a little bit more specifically about what attendees can expect during the session. It's going to be held on Thursday, June 5th. It's called How to Build and Protect Your Pricing Power, 11:45 a.m. Oh, that's a good time. People are still a little fresh and it's still morning. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, they might be a little antsy for lunch, but we'll keep them fed with snacks. So tell us what people can expect to learn in this session. What can they walk away with?
Right. So if it's three things, it's how to build and defend your pricing power. So it's that price setting, and setting it for the price that you deserve based on your values. And so number one. Number two is how to communicate your value. So it's not the easiest thing to when you figure out, okay, I am valuable. Now, how do I talk about it? And then number three is that we're going to dive into those common procurement tricks and tactics to improve your profitability, how to overcome them.
So finally, one last question. What's the best advice you could give your younger self just getting started?
Well, it's something that I learned. I was an Air Force pilot prior to getting into this, and so one of the things I walked away with was the opportunity, the ability to manage stress. And one of the things I learned was that it's not an emergency unless lives are at stake. It may
Well,
seem really stressful, but it's not an emergency unless, no kidding, lives are at stake.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you're interested in learning more about Brian and Holden Advisors, you can find them on the Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Brian, for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also really help the show by leaving a review and sharing with colleagues. We're all just slaves to the algorithm now, so I gotta ask. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.